Hi, this is Ian Desher, author of William Shakespeare's Star Wars, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi. With Dan Z, this is the podcast you're looking for.
We have to go back. You're injured.
I'm fine. Sol gave me an order.
Coward. You are going to betray me. What are you?
I have no name. But a Jedi like you might call me Sith.
Why did he say I shouldn't trust you? What did you do?
This is James Arnold Taylor, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi. I have a good feeling about this.
Friends, it is time. It is time to talk about one of the darkest episodes of Star Wars that I can probably recall. This is a heavy one, so you got to bring in some heavy hitters to talk about the 5th episode of The Acolyte. The episode is titled Night, and I've got 2 returning guests to Coffee with Kenobi. First, let's bring in who apparently has become the official co-host of The Acolyte on Coffee with Kenobi, Mr. James Burns. James, welcome back.
Thank you very much for having me again. I'm enjoying this.
Good. I'm enjoying it. Anytime I get FaceTime with you is fabulous.
Likewise. So
it's great. Also, a fabulous guy to have FaceTime with. He is the not co-host. Well, sometimes you're a co-host, but I think let's face it, you're the host of the Colby Cast, a wonderful person and a great friend of both me and the show, Mr. Colby Mead. Colby, welcome back to the show.
Dan, thank you. It's always a pleasure. I feel like I come home every time I get to talk to you on the show about anything. So I'm super happy to be back, especially talking about this episode.
Yeah, this episode is a heavy hitter. So let's just start out and jump right into it. James, I know you love when I put you on the spot right away. Do you want to give me one word and overall thoughts on the episode?
Exhilarating.
Okay. Tell me why.
It was just non-stop, and just when you thought you'd seen everything, there was more, and it was just kept giving us more and more and more, and lots of surprises, lots of twists and turns that I didn't necessarily see coming. And it seems that my Lord of the Rings moment from last week sort of explained itself.
Yes, it did. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm sure we'll talk about that. Colby, what is one word for you to describe Night and overall reactions to it?
I don't know that I have even decided on it. So I've been going back and forth between 2, and I'm just going to go ahead and pull the trigger and go with more. That's my word, more. And there's a lot to it, in my opinion, in my head anyway. So hopefully it'll come out of my mouth, these thoughts that I've been percolating for the last couple of days. I want more of these kinds of things, more of the stakes that have been raised in this episode. The action, give me more of that, because the action was, I got Qui-Gon Obi-Wan level vibes from like the Phantom Menace. Like the choreography in this episode and the action, the fighting scenes was just incredible. But at the same time, and having listened to your conversation over the last couple of weeks, I would like more of this show. I love this show, and I would just like more of it. Longer episodes, more backstory as to why characters are doing things. And that's why I went with more, because I want more of the good things and I want more information. Give me more of this Acolyte story. It's just tremendous so far.
It's funny. I was going to say that I had another word, which was redemption, because I'm sure for a lot of people who've not necessarily enjoyed the show so far, if this episode didn't redeem the show for you, then nothing will.
I was thinking about that too. I thought if this one isn't one that at least gets you to appreciate certain aspects of it, then it's probably not going to happen for you, because my word is cool. This is a cool episode. And when I was watching it the first time, I kept thinking, oh, geez, I hope, because I already know my word and we're only 10 minutes in, I hope I don't end up changing my word. And I didn't. It was cool. It was exhilarating. It was intense. It was well done. It was well done. There are still some things that I found narratively sloppy that I'm sure we will discuss. But overall, come on, this was really exciting stuff. So Colby, why don't you start us off? Tell me just one thing you want to talk about right away. What jumps out to you?
I'm going to paraphrase something that I read that Daphne Keene said in a really great article that was in Entertainment Weekly about this episode specifically. I don't know if you guys have seen it or if it's out there. I'm sure lots of people are reading it, but it's got comments from Manny Jacinto, Daphne Keene, everybody, Leslie Headland. It's a really good read. And one of the things that Daphne Keene mentioned was her character's death, which broke my heart because I have become a big Jackie fan over the course of this series. What really solidified it for me was last episode when she said to Osha the line that we're not defined by what we've lost, we're defined by what we survive, and you've survived a lot. I just love her heart, and she got some moments to shine here in this episode with the lightsaber fighting, which I thought was just her specifically was some of the best of the episode. And she said in this article that she was really okay with her character dying. And it's one of the things that Leslie Headland said right off the bat was that your character's going to die. And she thought that it was good because of the stakes that it brought. And it made me think about Star Wars overall. Star Wars has big stakes, but not necessarily personal stakes, because, a character dies, maybe he comes back or she comes back as a Force ghost. We don't really lose that character. One of my favorite lines from Luke Skywalker, no one's ever really gone. But I feel like with this show, people are gone, and that really raises the stakes to a level that I'm really not used to seeing in Star Wars, and I'm finding it to be quite exhilarating.
James, I know you really liked Jackie too, and you have since the beginning. What did that moment do for you?
I was gutted. I was absolutely gutted. I thought that Yord and Jackie would come out.
Jackie, literally. Sorry.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely.
Too soon, Dan.
But I thought that they were going to come out of it. I genuinely thought that a few of them would survive, and she wouldn't kill off all of them, but she pretty much did. Daphne Keene has been amazing right from the very beginning, and I've been fortunate to speak to her a couple of times now. And she's got so much enthusiasm, and she loves the character so much. And it just sort of broke my heart a little bit that we wouldn't be seeing her anymore. But then I thought, well, I'm sure they can go back and tell some other stories with her, because I think she really brings that character to life in such an incredible way. And I think she'll be missed. And I loved the camaraderie between her and Yord, and also between her and Amandla in terms of, May or Osha. So I think there's a lot to be missed, and we've still got 3 episodes of the show left, and I think there's still quite a bit more story to tell. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But I was literally gutted. And when Yord got his leg injury, I thought, okay, he's going to be fine. He's going to survive this. And then obviously he didn't either.
One of the things I really appreciated about this entire thing was that you just had a feeling the stakes were going to be incredibly high, because if you want this stranger, this mysterious evil being to have an impact, then someone's going to die, because if there's no cost, then there's no fear or trepidation, and it's hard to kind of emotionally invest. I didn't know who was going to die. I was stunned. This is why let's talk about Yord's death too. I was stunned when Yord died. I was really stunned when Jackie died, and both of them were just very violent and kind of unceremonious. Like Yord gets his neck snapped, which is we've never seen a Jedi killed in that personal of a fashion, because that's assassin style stuff. And even though a lightsaber is personal because it's up close and personal, stabbing someone's neck is pretty horrific. And then the way that Jackie died, I mean, there was no like, oh, maybe she'll survive, even though she was shot with lightning and shot out the window on Coruscant and flies to her death. Like people still want to think that Mace Windu is alive. He's not.
He is
alive.
He is.
No.
He is. He is.
Well, James says he is. Yeah.
I think he is.
He's an exclusive right here. So that part was really interesting to me. And it also, it's sort of weird, isn't it? Because there are not a lot of characters in this story. And Master Endara is killed right away. Kalnaka is killed right away. The guy whose name I always confuse with, I always think of as Tolman, an educational philosopher. who's a real person. He died right away. So it's so odd to me that, and this is where I think it's so unique. I'll use the word unique. Narratively,
Brave.
it's unique and a little disjointed, and it's brave, but it's also crazy because now you've got 2 actors, but 3 characters to invest in because nobody's left. It was hard enough to emotionally invest in these characters as it is, and then they're dead, and they're just dead, and it was shocking and stunning. Yord has never been my favorite character. Even after he runs away from the fray, and he takes the civilian Osha with him, which I thought was sort of an odd thing. But I guess he had to make it impersonal. I think Master Soul had to make it impersonal to help center his feelings because there was a lot of darkness that was kind of entering him because of the intensity of this fight with the stranger. So when he just, I don't know, he's just such an odd character. He didn't even seem the least bit concerned to me when he ran off. Like as soon as this horrific vampiric monster creature comes down and starts killing Jedi that are close to them right in front of their faces, it seems like after 30 seconds, they're kind of, I didn't get a sense of urgency from him. Did you? Did either of you?
No. It was, I think last week I talked about Batman and how the shadowy character sort of just landed and then took on the Jedi, and he came across very much like that this week as well, in terms of the way he was fighting and his stance, and what's the word I'm looking for? The way that he attacks is very, very thought out well, but he does it when you're least expecting it. And some of those moments in the episode really, really got me, actually, because just when you thought the action was done, there was another moment. And stealth is the word I was looking for. Stealth.
I think to comment on your observation with Yord and his sense of, or lack of sense of urgency, that whole scenario seemed to me like the creators of the show saying, okay, we need to mix something in here to stop the fighting because we can't just have 30 minutes of fighting. Even there was a quote Leslie Headland put out saying that her first feedback from this draft was, this is just 30 minutes of fighting. Don't you think the audience is going to tune out? And she said, no, I don't think so, because it's going to be so awesome, which she was right. Yes. But I do also think that these were like strategically placed breathers where we need to, as an audience, step back and be like, okay, let's listen to some dialogue here. Let's advance a little bit of the plot and talk about get inside the characters' minds where they're at. But you're right. There was no, if I were Yord, I'm grabbing Osha, and Soul is saying it, running. Civilian to the ship, civilian to the ship. That was the line. And he repeated it back, like, understood, aye, Captain. You're grabbing her and running. No, they didn't really seem like that. They're worrying about Basil. Where'd Basil go? And look at the things that are up in the trees now. So, yeah.
And why did she listen to Osha? Why did she take Osha's orders over her master? Over his master? Soul gave him a direct order. Osha said, no, we're going to do it a different way. Maybe because Jackie was involved. I'm not sure. Maybe that answers a little bit about the relationship between Yord and Jackie. Maybe there was some form of love there. I don't know. But he listened to Osha, and he disobeyed his master directly.
He did. And there does need to be a breakup. But I still feel like I should have seen a little bit of panic with Yord. I mean, he was stoic to the point of unawareness of the intensity of what is going on, because the amount of evil that's being spread not too far from him is pretty serious. Like, I don't know. I mean, if you want to talk about Obi-Wan and Anakin, Obi-Wan would have concern, but he would be focused on the mission. I just would have liked to have seen a little bit more performance in that sequence. I think it would have made me more sad when Yord met his demise, because he just was he wasn't stoic. He was just kind of just bland. I'm not trying to I don't mean to be a complainer about it, because I think narratively this episode is so good and so strong and so affecting that I think it would have raised the stakes a little bit more with him.
I
So-
think if I could jump on that real quick, I think that sort of goes back to my word more, because I think that's been at least from what I've heard, a common criticism of the show is that we don't understand why characters are doing things. There's been some narrative holes here and there, and it goes back to me wanting more. If we would have had longer episodes with a little bit more exploration into characters, they've been dropping hints. We know that Yord and Osha have a history. We've learned that in the first, but we don't know anything about that history. Maybe if they had invested more time in that, in teaching us what that was about, that scene with them running away would have been a little bit more impactful.
That's what I would hope. James, what's the first point you want to bring up?
Well, we've never seen it on screen before, but it happened 3 times in this episode. The lightsabers weren't working. Where did that come from? First, we saw it with 2 of the unnamed Jedi, and then we had it with Jackie, and we've never seen that before on screen. I don't think we've ever seen it in the Clone Wars either. So that
I actually have an answer.
Go on.
I read it. It's probably the same article that Colby read. I don't know, but
right.
And I think it's alluded to in Stars.com. But there's the medal that the stranger is wearing. I don't remember the type of medal that is
right.
the name, but that for some reason affects the circuitry of the lightsaber, causing it to short out. And when I knew that, and I watched it a second time, when they hit his helmet or his armor, that's when it shorts out.
It. Okay, all right. Well, that makes more sense then, because I just thought that sort of took me out of it, and I'm like, well, we've never seen that as a means to move the story further forward. And the first time it happened, I thought, okay, I can accept that. But when it happened with Jackie, and there was no exposition there, so we didn't know what was going on. So without that bit of information, it just seemed really odd.
Well, that's maybe symbolic of the show overall.
Yeah.
That there's certain key elements missing. Perhaps it is cool though when every time the stranger shows up again, the lighting and the electricity flickers, because it does apparently send out some sort of I don't know the science behind it, and this is science fantasy, not science fiction. So who cares? But it makes for a cool atmosphere when the lighting flickers. It makes it more horrific. Yes,
no, I agree with you. Completely agree with you.
So the metal is apparently called cortosis. And
there you go.
There's 2 sides to it, right? I love its inclusion. I had no idea it existed before this. And James, like you, I was also confused as to what's going on. Is he breaking the hilt?
Yeah.
Has he done something to the physical structure? What is this? And as it went on, I just sort of went with it, because clearly he's got something that is making it difficult for the Jedi. And then after the fact, Dan, you alluded to it. I do think it is included in that article. They give a little bit of background in it. It's something they've imported from Legends. It's something that was in certain Legends things, but it also was used in some comics, in canon comics. And I'm sorry, I can't name them for you, but it had been established in a very minor way in canon. So what was confusing to me, I love the fact she used it. I really like that. Anytime you can foil a lightsaber, it's exciting to me. And we get that with Beskar, right? With that Beskar staff from The Mandalorian. And now we have another element out there that can defend against lightsabers. And that's cool. I like that. To borrow your word, Dan, cool. The thing is, again, I don't want to be the guy that beats the dead horse. Give us a scene that gives us something that we can reference so that we're not confused. Even I'm thinking of like
Master's still saying, "Oh, they must be using cortosis."
Correct.
Or even something.
That's what we needed.
Some weird, some weird scene like when Kylo Ren goes to those monkey aliens and fixes his helmet. Something where we're seeing that metal being formed or manipulated. So we know as an audience, that's why we need to pay attention to that. And then when it happens, we're like, okay, something about that metal is. So again, give us a little bit more detail.
There's definitely some exposition missing, and the story would flow a lot better filling in some of these small gaps.
Agreed. I agree. Well, let's for my first one, I want to talk about. We've alluded to this character a lot. I finally have a favorite character in the series besides Master Soul, and that is the Stranger. The Stranger is dynamite. I found myself hoping that every scene he would show up again. Not because I wanted anything bad to happen, not because I wanted Jedi to die, because that's certainly not the case, but he's so riveting and compelling. This performance, and once I realized that this is the same actor from The Good Place, I about fell over. I couldn't believe it. He's dynamite. What is his name? The actor's name?
Manny Jacinto.
Yeah, Manny is just dynamite. The way he changes his voice, he's super toned and ripped for this. He requested to be the guy that actually did all the lightsaber work and choreography, and I believe that he did. But he is dynamite. His presence is frightening. Very almost like a slasher / horror creature / vampire / demon from Lord of the Rings, as James has alluded to for the past couple of weeks. But he is why this episode is cool. Every time he is on screen, I'm frightened for the heroes, and I'm drawn into him like Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight. I was just so enthralled with him. His performance in this is my favorite thing about this entire series. And I'm glad we didn't see him earlier because it wouldn't have had as much impact. But this salvages quite a bit of this for me because this is a character that I am riveted by. Absolutely fascinated.
He's menacing. That's the word that keeps popping into my head. And we saw a little bit of it. I think it was in the second episode when Osha was pretending to be May and going in to try to get some information on that planet where they killed Master Torben. And he switches from his goofy self to this when he's looking at May. He's very close to her and he just has this change in facial expression. And you see him go from his facade, which is a dork, to just menacing immediately. And I bought it from the get-go. I didn't want him to be the stranger. I know there was a lot of conversation about that, but now that I see he is, I'm all in. I'm good because he pulled it off so much. Knowing that he did the majority of his fight work, knowing that he trained for 4 months, not just to learn the choreography, but to transform his body. If you look at him in The Good Place, he does not look like what he looks like in this show. I mean, those arms, like, I'm jealous, right? But it goes with the character. He is a formidable force. He's a force to be reckoned with. And yeah, I'm all in. I agree with you, Dan. He is menacing and he sold it. And I can't wait to see what else we get from him.
I was glad to hear Leslie Headland say that this wasn't supposed to be a twist. Like they were okay with this kind of being telegraphed. Because I said recently, if he is the big bad, I'm going to be disappointed because they made it so obvious. But it sounds like they kind of did that on purpose, or they didn't care if it came across because he's sort of hiding in plain sight. And I think there's some narrative intrigue with that strategy. It was cool. And I don't know who else it could have been anyway. So I'm good with the twist, the air quotes twist.
Yeah, a lot. I think he comes across in the role so well, and I just love his demeanor. Everything about him, the behind the scenes stuff that he shared this week was absolutely incredible. And to do all of that himself and to put himself up to do it takes a lot of courage, and he pulled it off in every way.
A worthy enemy in the Star Wars canon.
Yeah,
for sure.
I also
Colby,
enjoyed if I could.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I could just make this my point.
Yeah, do it.
I'll
Go
sort
ahead.
of extend it. I really enjoyed learning the background of how they chose to write this character, because Leslie Headland referenced that the idea of him being this imposter and sort of a clumsy goofball, but actually being this menacing, uber skilled villain, came from the 1966 movie. It's a martial arts movie called Come Drink With Me. And the character that she got this inspiration from was Drunken Cat, which is a hero, not a villain. And that was her twist on it, which was, we've seen these characters before, this drunken master, a good guy, sort of down on his luck, but he's fooling everybody by walking around pretending to be drunk or a goofball, and ends up being just masterfully skilled and a hero in the end. I thought of the movie for The Forbidden Kingdom with Jackie Chan, where he plays a character like that. And she said she wanted to make a character like this, but she was going to make him the villain, which I think is interesting. And my boys and I, on the most recent episode of the Colby Cast, sort of had a discussion. It didn't work for them. They liked the idea of this drunken goofball type of character ending up being a hero, but it didn't land for them being the villain. And I just thought that was an interesting perspective, because it worked for me, it didn't work for them. But I see their point, right? You want to be surprised by a good guy. You want to be surprised by a villain, I think maybe in a different way, and maybe that's what their point is. But I love the fact that she put this much thought and care and effort into developing this character. And also another fun fact is that Manny Jacinto never even auditioned for the role. She approached him and said, I want you for this role. And you think he's going to say no to Star Wars?
Right.
I just think that's great.
I do too. I do too. Go ahead, James.
I was going to say, it's funny, my two boys that are similar age to yours, Colby, were the opposite to your boys, and they actually both felt that this was the strongest episode of the season so far, and they love the character. So it's just interesting to hear different people's perspectives.
Isn't it fun? And for my money, the Stranger is the best developed character in this whole series, and we don't know anything about him. So that's kind of a pro and a con. But I think he's interesting. He's more compelling than anyone except for Master Soul, which I probably will talk about from my next one. James, what's your next one?
I'm just trying to think. There were a few points. Let's talk about the tracker.
Okay.
There were points in the episode that I just thought, why is that character on screen? It doesn't make any sense. It's not moving the story any further along until the last couple of shots of the episode when it all sort of fit together. But I don't know whether we needed to see him on screen the whole time, because it didn't really add anything until then. And maybe it was just a way of layering character so that when the obvious bit came at the end of the episode, it all sort of fit. But I don't know, it just sort of took me out of it.
It felt forced and not gimmicky, but just sort of like a very convenient Deus Ex Machina to try to explain how this tracker is going to solve this little mystery of the Shakespearean twist of the twins, or and the Parent Trap switching their identities.
I agree. I think it's a plot device to show us, hey, someone knows something is amiss. And I'm not going to say too much because Dan, you alluded to talking about Master Soul, but somebody needs to, because Soul clearly doesn't for some reason.
And why not? Again, why not? Why wouldn't a master, a Jedi Knight even, beyond a master, why wouldn't have he known that? Why wouldn't have he be able to sense the fact that it wasn't who it was supposed to be? Or maybe he does know and he was going along with it so he could then deal with the situation. I guess we'll find out next week.
I hope that's the case, because not only that, but the Stranger doesn't seem to sense that he's dealing not with May, but with Osha, right? Because of a haircut? If they're both super strong in the Force. My next one, I do want to talk about Soul, but I'm just going to talk about the thing that still keeps me, and I've realized in this episode, what is keeping me from fully embracing this, and it's Amanda's performance. It's shallow for me, and I'm sorry. I don't love feeling that way. I think she seems to be a wonderful person, very passionate, but I don't blame her. I don't think she has a lot to work with either Osha or May. They're very flat characters. They don't really change at all. They have the same kind of emotional beats and ticks from the beginning. It might change, but we need a little bit of a sign. You could say that about Soul, but Soul has shown various degrees of nuance that they're still shaping. But whether it's Osha or May, Osha, when she's running with Yord, that I don't feel a sense of urgency there. The fact that May awkwardly hugs her sister, that makes sense because of the emotional distance between them and all of the trauma. That makes complete sense. But the fact that she wants to switch roles, I mean, maybe to try to infiltrate the Jedi and try to redeem herself in the Stranger's eyes, perhaps. But if she keeps saying she loves her sister, but she just leaves her and changes her clothes, so she's going to end up with the Master, who's such a horrible, murderous beast. What? It leads to my initial observation that she's some kind of a sociopath, or because why else would you leave your estranged sister who you claim to love in the hands of a mass murderer who's a scheming, dangerous, villainous, venomous entity of darkness? So if she is just a sociopath, why would I root for that person? Why would there be any emotional connection to that person? And that is a massive problem for me.
There's a lot of inconsistencies with May and Osha. I agree with you, Dan, right there. Lots of things happen that we don't know why. And I want to say, my fan brain that says I'm rooting for this, I want to say that it's leading to some big reveal. And the word mystery with this show that we've been hearing over and over again, maybe that's really the mystery, is what's going on with May and Osha. But I don't know that they've been executing it in a very efficient way. It's been quite clunky.
If they were side characters, sure. But if you're the lead and you're supposed to carry this, there's got to be some levels, and I don't see any levels. And again, I take no pleasure in this. And if other people are enjoying it, and they see levels and they see things I don't see, let me know, because I would love to learn from you. It just, for me right now, after 5 episodes of an 8-episode arc, it does not exist, and they're the main characters.
See, for me, episode 1 and 2, I really loved her performance. I thought it came across really, really well. Obviously, episode 3, she wasn't in, and episode 4 and 5, I agree, it's sort of gone the other way, which is a real shame, because I think, that opening scene with her as May was incredible, and she came across really, really well there. And even in some of the scenes on the spaceship, when the spaceship was, crashing down and things like that, I really enjoyed the performance, and it worked for me. But it does seem a little lackluster here. But maybe it's because we're comparing her to Manny's performance, who goes so much the other way, and sort of, is the star on the screen in more ways than one, that anybody else against him is going to seem rather lackluster.
Oh, I agree. It's just, if that's the case, that's unfortunate, because if you're the lead, you got to carry it.
Yeah,
and I don't blame Amanda, and I hope it didn't come across as that. I think she's not given a lot to work with, I don't think.
One thing I wanted to share about Amanda Stenberg is how great of an ambassador she has become for Star Wars. Because
absolutely,
oh my gosh, the stuff that they're putting out with her, the violin bit, Hayden sending her a message and her reaction, she just seems so genuinely in love with playing a character in this galaxy, and it gives me so much joy seeing that.
I agree with all of that. I just, this character is just. It wouldn't have bugged me as much if we would have seen at least a little bit of a fraction on May's face of, oh, should I be doing this? Like, even like a moment of doubt. Should I be doing that? But again, if she's just a lunatic.
But that could be down to direction.
It could be, because the rest of the direction is so sharp.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a beautifully choreographed and filmed and lit. This is a beautiful episode. I mean, it's gorgeous. It's absolutely a work of art. I just wanted more from that performance. So, but I've beaten a dead horse. Colby, let's go to you for your last point you like to talk about.
Everything has been crossed off of my list. I'm just excited to see where we go. This episode, actually, I tweeted a GIF of my reactions, and it's from a Jim Carrey movie, and I don't know which one. It was the one where he's like got this horrified face, and he just keeps covering his eyes, and you can see Jim Carrey making that face, right? And that's how I was in this episode, because from the beginning, I guess this is going back to the action, maybe the shock of everything. You guys talked last week about all these nameless Jedi that were included on this mission. Well, now we know why. I think Daz brought it up. We know why.
8 of them. Well, 8 of them, including Yord and Jackie, are all gone. That's the Fellowship. Completely finished.
Gone. And I don't know that we've seen anything like that since Revenge of the Sith, as far as the type of violence. I mean, we were all a fan of the action. It was shocking, but not in a negative or bad way for me. I was okay with it, but as Star Wars veterans like yourselves, I'm interested to hear what you guys thought of just the pure carnage of the episode and who we lost.
It was very brave to do that. I really enjoyed it. I have to say, I found it I think it fit within the narrative, and I think it worked well. I was just shocked that she literally got rid of everyone except, for Osha and Soul, effectively, and the tracker. I genuinely thought that Jackie and or Yord would survive, but I think it's a brave decision to kill off, as we said earlier on, to kill off some of your main characters in the show. You've literally, you've killed 5 or 6 main characters at this point, and we've still got 3 episodes to go. So that's a big thing to do.
I mean, it's going to save them money budget-wise on actors.
True. And residuals as well.
Yeah.
And I want to hear your opinion on that too. And I want to sort of add a wrinkle to it, knowing that you have the youngest child of the 3 of us. James referenced that we both have sons that are older. This is appropriate for their age range. But I know that you enjoy, one of the big things, Dan, that you do is enjoy Star Wars with Mason. So I don't even know if Mason is watching this with you, if you guys are watching it together like you normally do with other things. But you as a father, even a Star Wars dad, how does that type of dynamic, how do you feel, or are you watching it with him, and how are you handling that with a younger child?
He hasn't watched it. The trailer, it didn't really gravitate. He didn't gravitate towards it. And I don't think, even if he did want to, I think I would have put it off, because I think it's a little dark. I think some of the stuff is a little scary. And honestly, I think he would have been bored. I think he would have been bored the first couple of episodes. Sure. And I could be wrong. I mean, it's not fair for me to speak for Mason. He's a pretty intelligent, insightful little guy, and he may have loved it. I'm looking forward to seeing what he thinks about it at some point. I do kind of want to show him this episode, because the fight sequences are so cool. And he and I have been watching the Mission Impossible franchise together, and he's a really big fan of action. And this is certainly a good episode for that. But as far as the amount of carnage and things like that, it's definitely the most intense. We've seen with Andor and other things a slow push towards Star Wars, quote, growing up, and for a more adult audience. I'm still very much of a mindset that Star Wars should always be fun and kind of aimed at a younger audience that has messages, themes, and bigger ideas that translate to adults, like the original trilogy. But that doesn't mean that's what it has to be. That is just my proclivity and my preference. But I thought if this episode wasn't like that, it would have been disappointing, because that's where they've led it towards. I mean, that's been the idea of this, the Acolyte, set during the High Republic, with the rise of evil. I mean, if there isn't carnage and death, and things like this, I think it would have been a bit of a letdown, because I think that had to happen. And if you want to establish that the stranger is a big deal and frightening, okay, then that has to happen. So I think it was necessary for the story they're trying to tell.
And I don't think we've seen the end of it either, because if you go back to the trailer, there's still bits from the trailer that we've not seen with Venestra and some of the other things in that. Everyone made a huge deal about the lightsaber whip, which we've not seen yet.
Mm-hmm.
So there's still more to come. I don't think we've seen the end of this.
And I didn't watch that trailer. The first Star Wars trailer I've never watched. No, because I wanted the story to come in blind. Yeah, no, I knew about the whip, of course.
Yeah.
So interesting. All right, James, what's your next? This will probably be the last one, I'm assuming.
Choreography. I have to say that in terms of lightsaber duels that we've seen in Star Wars, and we've seen some absolute blinders over the years, this is up there. This is really, really intense. I said to Dan yesterday that I would watch it again this morning, and I did. And I went back and watched the lightsaber duel a couple of times this morning, because it was really, really impressive. We've seen duels between 2 people, between 3 people, but to see it with this sort of number of people, we've never seen that before, really. Not on screen, not all at one time. And I think they did an incredible job, and I think Manny did an amazing job. But when, for example, Jackie pulled out the other lightsaber that she had on her belt, I mean, that was incredible. I loved that. I thought it was very, very well done. It was very clever. It worked. It flowed. I was just engrossed in it, and which is why I came up with the word exhilarating, because it just kept on going, and I think they did a great job. I think they did an absolute superb job, and it's up there. If we can't take anything else from the show, there's a huge tick, because lightsaber duels, they've completely, knocked it out of the park.
It's super cool. It's like, that's why it's my word. That's an exceptional bit of choreography. I love that Star Wars continues to reinvent itself with lightsaber duels, because that is pretty much the heart and soul of the thing that always draws us in. I saw something recently that I think is important to mention, especially to younger audiences. In The New Hope, before it was called A New Hope, when Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader fought on screen, now we watch that scene with sort of a wary eye and think, oh, it's slow, it's blah, blah. You have to understand, when that came out, that was epic. That affected audiences probably more so than this lightsaber sequence, these sequences did for audiences, because we hadn't seen anything like it. It was a full-on duel with lightsabers, which were a brand new concept. So the fact that they're taking lightsaber duels and reinventing them, and even the stranger's lightsaber that actually pulls apart into a smaller one, almost like a lightsaber dagger, and he does the 3 stabs. Wow. I agree. If that is just spellbindingly incredible. That was just phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. The entire, every time these two or anybody's dueling, or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people, it's exceptional.
I'm a sucker for the behind the scenes choreography training videos that we see and have seen over the years with like Ewan and Hayden. And now a couple of these have started to be released with Manny and also with Daphne. And just, I'm so always in awe, utterly spellbound by the athleticism. And I love how the actors really refer a lot to dance when they're talking about training for these things. And Manny Jacinto said that too. He referenced how excited he was because this sort of tapped into his dance background, which he hadn't used in a long time. And when you see it on screen, it's clear. But when you see it in the behind the scenes training videos, you just see how many parallels there are to dance choreography. And to know that it's in a fight, advancing the story is just so wonderful to me. So yeah, great call.
It was great. It was great. The only last thing I want to talk about is the sense of loss, which is big. But there's a part of it that almost feels like we feel it more than some of the performers, some of the characters do. Because, and this is, I can't talk about this episode without bringing this up. All the cool stuff, all the great little twists, all the fun things that happen. All these Jedi die. And just die unceremonially, like, Jecki, Yord, characters that we are supposed to care about, that these Jedi care about, and they leave their bodies. They don't take their bodies. They don't bury their bodies. We've seen death several times with Jedi in the history of almost 50-year history of Star Wars, and the bodies are always taken. In Tales of the Jedi, you see Jedi buried and light shoots up from the temple, and there's a beautiful ceremony. I didn't have to see that, and I understand that Master Soul was really so in shock. He was in shock, but they didn't bring the bodies of these people that they cared about and loved, that they are their peers.
We don't know that they won't come back to get them, though.
But why didn't they just take them now?
Because there's so many of them. Maybe there's if you include Kelnaka, there's 9 bodies to take back between 2 of them.
Seems like but even before, like, this is before the Old Testament was written. That's one of the most primal things. Egyptian culture, Greek culture, Mesopotamian culture. You bury your dead. You respect your dead. It's the gravest violation to not bury a body in all cultures, in all time. And the Jedi that are super compassionate and feel connection to the Force, they completely don't even acknowledge it. Like, you can't even acknowledge it, and you're just going to leave and come back. That would never happen. I think that bothered me so much.
Could it have happened off screen? Because much of this episode, so much of this series seems to have happened off screen, and we don't know certain things.
But don't you think that would be important to show compassion, like to acknowledge that?
Just a bit.
I caught on to the same thing, Dan. I was like, oh man, they're leaving all those Jedi there. And I think if they could have I think the progression of the story, there was no sense of urgency to get off the planet. And that's the only reason that I could imagine anyone leaving dead colleagues behind, is an urgency of imminent threat. And the threat had been dissipated in Soul's mind. May is now with Soul. Osha's knocked out, and the stranger doesn't seem to be in a hurry either. I think if they would have made it a little bit more desperate to get off this planet, to get away from this area,
to run to the ship, to run inside
right,
the ship,
but
and
we didn't get
communicate.
any of that. I do have I won't say why, but I do have an idea. I don't think we're done with this planet, though. James, to your point, I think we're going to be going back, and if we do, I really, really hope that they address that. Maybe just give us some kind of a scene where, like a funeral scene, something to sort of dissipate that concern. Because
there better be, because I think that's unforgivable. I think that's a storytelling unforgivability. You can't leave dead bodies of your colleagues there and not address it and not talk about it, especially when you're the guardians of peace and justice.
Yeah.
There is that's all the way back to thousands of years BC. You bury your dead. You respect the death of those that are enemies and allies alike.
There was one other point that sort of, the way that it turned from night to day just so quickly
out of nowhere.
They were hugging and suddenly it's daytime.
There was an awkward pause. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, sorry?
Yeah.
That seemed really odd as well.
That was an awkward. There are a number of scenes when the Master Soul and the stranger are fighting where he's about to do a thing and there's a random cut. Like, I know you want to do the kind of cool cinematic cuts, like in A New Hope that does 40 some cuts. So there were some awkward editing choices too. But again, people far smarter than me are telling these stories. I just and I appreciate that. I've received a lot of great comments from people about our coverage of the series, and because I think it's okay to not like everything in an episode or in a series or in a franchise, and have critical thinking and intellectual honesty. And I appreciate that the three of us, especially the two of you, are bringing that to the table. It enriches my understanding of this story.
And it's not to say it's a bad story.
No.
Overall, I'm enjoying the series.
Me too. Even though I'm hiding it well.
I think that this has been a great opportunity for very mature and insightful discourse.
Yes.
And the example that some things can fall short and it's not going to ruin your life. It's not going to lead to hate and anger. And people like yourselves, and I had a tremendous conversation on a couple episodes ago with someone you may know, Dan, Corey Club. We talked about episode 3, the flashback episode, and it fell short for him. And he had wonderful reasons why. And he explained them in such a great way. And I found that conversation, because I was on the opposite end of it. I enjoyed it. But
I did too.
What I really enjoyed was my conversation with Corey, because we were two people that stood on sort of different opposite ends with different perspectives. And the conversation was uplifting, fulfilling, and I came away feeling better about it than the opposite. And I like that we have an opportunity as a community to be that type of example, to show everyone else out there, it's okay if you don't like it. Just make sure that you have good reasons why, and you can explain to them.
Absolutely. The conversation is so important.
100%. If more people did what we were doing in a sensible, constructive, fair way, and not once have we ever gone to a point where we've been disrespectful to any of the cast, the crew, or anything like that. There's no need to do that. You don't need to do that.
Nope.
Amen.
It's
Amen.
Absolutely not. This is a story about laser swords. And it makes us happy. More often than not.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are. With Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is... yes.
The three of you, by the way, make me happy. Not more often than not, but all the time. It's just an absolute delight and a pleasure to speak with the both of you. I always learn from you. And I appreciate you both so much, James. I think it's fair to say you're stuck with me for the rest of the season, buddy.
Damn.
I
Real
know.
shame.
Isn't
Really
it?
gutted. You can tell.
What can I?
Oh, dear.
We'll power through, my friend.
We will.
Please let
We'll
us know
do
what's
it.
going on with Jedi News.
Well, Jedi News is your place for Star Wars news. Come to us 24/7, 365 days of the year for the latest Star Wars news as it happens. And there's so much going on at the moment. You've got HasLabs and this, that, and the other. And yeah, there's tons going on.
There sure is. And Colby, you continue to be a delight on the podcast airwaves. You and your boys, you and your guests. It's just always fun to chat with you and listen to your insights and your passion for fandom. Please let us know what's going on with you in the Colby Cast.
I appreciate it, Dan. And before I do that, can I just assume that we're all giving this episode an A+? Or
Oh, we haven't graded it. Thank you.
Shock horror.
I wouldn't assume that. You want to give it an A+?
I don't know. I wish there's something existed between A and A+, because I don't think it is an A+, but I do think it's a little bit more than an A. You're a teacher. Is there anything between those two? Because
I mean, it's all percentage-wise, you know?
Okay, yeah. It's a very high A. I think that the things that shined brighter than the things that didn't. And I found it to be just a captivating episode of television. Really, bottom line, I was captivated by it. So I'll give it a very, very strong A.
Thank you I can't believe I forgot to grade it. I never forget to grade myself. James, how would you grade this one?
I'm going to give it an A as well. There were a few things that I didn't particularly like, but on the whole, it was a fantastic episode of Star Wars.
If I'm just grading the Stranger and the fighting, it's 100% on the dot. But because of the inconsistencies with Ocean May, because of some things admitted, because of a lack of urgency with some of the characters, and because of the grievous error that I can't get over, which is leaving dead bodies behind, this is the lowest A- possible before we get into B+ range, because of those.
Very fair.
That's fair.
Yeah. But going back to the Colby Cast, yeah, Caleb, Luke, and I, we talk about everything. Anything that might be on our minds. We're talking about House of the Dragon and The Acolyte right now simultaneously, which is a challenge, but we managed to do it. But yeah, we're going to be coming up with Deadpool and Wolverine next month when that drops. We love to talk about anything that I can talk to my two boys about, and they can still dedicate an hour or so of their time, and I get to put it out there for everyone to enjoy. That's what we do at the Colby Cast. So we hope that it brings a smile to people's faces, and we love to build the community and be a place for people to interact with these franchises that we love so much. So Dan, as always, I love being on the show. I thank you so much for the invite.
My pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you both so much, and be sure to get your top 5 lists ready to join me next week to talk about your top 5 moments or things that stand out to you from the Acolyte's 5th episode night. And also, don't forget, continue to ask me your questions about our Star Wars Disney cruise experience on the Disney Wish, June 16th to 20th, 2025, with myself and MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. Cabins are booking, so please reach out at coffeewithkenobi.com/Disney Wish for your no cost, no obligation quote. On behalf of myself, Colby Mead, and James Burns, we will see you next time. May the stars light your way, my friends. Oh, James has had something.
Yeah, I've got something really, really important to say before we wrap up and go, which is to Colby, to Dan, to all your families and friends, I wish you a very, very happy Independence Day for July 4th. And to everybody else here in the UK and across Europe, happy Thursday.
Thank you, my friend.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here. Move along.